Hello there. Welcome to Life Lived Out of Order. Today I want to talk to you about, talking to your kids about puberty, sex, sexuality, relationships. I've noticed in modern American life that directly talking about puberty, love, and sexuality have become taboo subjects, and it's a part of what's destroying young people and the nuclear family, or the concept of the nuclear family. We need to talk to our children about this. We need to be more open. I'm on this subject now because my older daughter is 10 and going through puberty fast enough to be scary for any parent. I prepared for this quite some time ago and refreshed my knowledge recently because I knew I had to talk to her and let her know what was going on. I also talked to two separate female friends and I was flabbergasted by what they told me. Being the father, being that these are my children, it's my duty. This is my calling. So I felt it was just kind of natural for parents to talk to their kids, but apparently a lot of parents are having problems with this these days. So about my friends, my girls participate in Girl Scouts, and I went to one of the scout leaders who also works for the local school system, and I asked her, "What grade is sex ed?" Like I said, I asked her because I feel that it's my duty as a parent to talk to my daughter before government organization gives a mandatory class on something so personal. Especially since kids start puberty before the school system teaches it, at least in my local school system. So I hope your school systems give you a chance to talk to your kids first. Her response was both hilarious and scary at the same time. Right. So she said that she's been a Girl Scout leader for a long time. She has older kids and younger kids, so she's been in Girl Scouts a long time. And one time, actually, what she's had to talk to about parents, she says she has to tell parents, "Hey, you need to talk to your children. You need to talk to your daughters about puberty before I have to do it." And some of the responses she got from parents was, "Oh, well, we'll let her figure it out on the internet." The fuck? I grew up in the 90s. I learned a lot of shit off the internet in the 90s. Okay? That was dial-up. Now we have fast internet, we have Google, we have everything at your fingertips. I mean, you might as well just call it the pedonet. You honestly think letting your kids learn this shit on the internet is a good idea? No. No. Absolutely not. I will slap your ass. Stupid. And then after she told parents, "Hey, you need to talk to your kids," some of the parents came back to her and said, "Hey, go ahead and talk to my kid about it." Like, why should parents be afraid of talking to their child? When you do that, you just destroy the relationship between you and your child when you refuse to have these very needed discussions. You're telling your child that your child can't come to you with this information, that they can't trust you. Don't harm your child that way. So anyway, the Girl Scout leader's still talking. She says that one time on a Girl Scout camping trip, one of her girls got her period for the first time. And this girl is freaking out. She thought she was dying. I mean, that's pretty... we all know that when you cut yourself and you bleeding's not a good thing. You have to stop the bleeding. But, I mean, bleeding from your down under parts and bleeding so much, that's got to be scary for a child if they're not expecting it. Child thought she was going to die. So, I mean, I can totally laugh at that situation and find it horrendous at the same time. So, then I talked to a friend of mine, I was telling a friend of mine, female friend of mine, that I was going to talk to my daughter about, menstruation and her period and whatnot. And my friend just kind of volunteered her story for me. And just so you know, she's already an eclectic person. And I guess just to make the story a little easier, we're just going to call her Brittany, right? So she said that when she was 12 years old, she went with her father to her father's girlfriend's house, and of course her father and the father's girlfriend sneak off somewhere to do some other things. And there, she's pretty much just sitting there watching TV, gets bored, goes into the bathroom. And, 12-year-olds start thinking that they're adults and they can do adult things. So she walks into the bathroom and she finds tampons, and she's like, you know what, I'm a woman now. I can do these things. I should be able to know these things, but she hadn't had her period yet, and nobody had talked to her. So she reads the instructions on the tampon, and it basically says, insert down under. And so she's trying to figure out exactly how to fulfill the instructions. And surprise, she discovers a part of herself that she never knew was there. It freaked her out so much to realize that there is so much open space or another port. Freaked her out so much that she got nauseous and passed out. When she passed out, she freaking bashed her head on the freaking on the tile. So she wakes up a few minutes later, her head's covered in blood because she passed out at this discovery, and now she has to figure out what to do about her the gushing blood from her head. So she goes and bangs on her dad's girlfriend's bedroom door, saying, "Hey, I need some help here," just screaming bloody murder. And the girlfriend opens the door, and just imagine how bizarre that situation is. It would have been solved if somebody had just sat her down, because you can tell when a child's going through puberty. It would have solved so many problems in advance to just sit down and say, hey, so this is what's happening, this is what's going to happen. Also, don't use tampons, only use pads. Not hard, but parents are having a hard time doing that these days. Now, for me, this happened, how my parents talked to me. Actually, my parents didn't talk to me. My mother talked to me. One day when I was like 12 or 13 or so, my mom came into my room with this medical book, and she gave me a very clinical rundown of how everything works. And by that age, I already had figured out most things. I mean, we did have the internet. I was slightly a little off about how the menstrual cycle worked, but I wasn't interested in asking questions either. I for a long time, I kind of resented that my dad didn't talk to me because he was present and that was his job, but he didn't do it. So I was glad that painful encounter was over, but it never should have been so clinical. Like it was a clinical book, and I was given a clinical definition of everything. So, fast forward many years to just a few years before now, there was this show called Glee on the television, and it was bizarre. It was kind of a guilty pleasure to watch that. I mean, they did have good music for the first couple of seasons. But one of the aspects of the show, there was this gay kid. There was this gay boy, and the father didn't want to talk to his gay son because, apparently parents already don't want to talk to their kids about sex and sexuality. But, I mean, this guy having to talk to his gay son about it, like, he didn't know what to do. But eventually the father decided, well, I really need to talk to my son before he gets information from the wrong people, and there's a lot of wrong people out there. So I'm watching this on television, and I'm thinking, wow, what else are they going to put on TV? This is hilarious. So the father sits down with the son, throws these pamphlets on the counter, and says, okay, here's some pamphlets on the mechanics of it. Read those and get back to me. Automatically, I'm like, well, that was hilarious. What's that about? And then he starts talking about what do you call actual relationships, how sex and emotions come together and how they shouldn't come together, and what actually needs to be sorted out within a relationship involving sex. And that just blew my mind so much that a parent would talk about that. I was amazed that the father was talking about how emotions and sexuality interacted and the importance of understanding them. I realized I never received any such advice from my parents, and I was always pretty lost trying to figure out how love and sex was supposed to come together in the right way, because when you don't get the information, you just assume that you're supposed to magically know, but nobody magically knows. It's got to be explained. It's we're not animals. Animals figure shit out on their own pretty fast, but then again, they're animals. They don't drive cars, they don't fly planes, they don't go to work. They eat and they poop. All right, they're a lot closer to their instincts than we are to ours. So if you don't talk to your children, then it'll either be a situation of a blind leading the blind, because your idiot kid's going to ask some other idiot kid, and they're going to use whatever knowledge they have. Blind leading the blind. Or it can be a situation of the spider welcoming the fly into his parlor. Hence the old phrase, "Welcome to my parlor," said the spider to the fly. Kids seek knowledge. It is what they are designed to do. If you do not provide that knowledge in a very educational and beneficial way, they will seek it from whomever they can find it from. So do you want so if your 13-year-old daughter is in school and learning about periods, but and feels like she can't ask you anything because you've never talked to her about it and you've always been hush-hush about it, do you want her to learn it from a 15-year-old boy? Because that shit can happen. Talk to your kids, and also talk to your sons. Now, I don't have any boys, but there's plenty to talk to them about too. Because they need to understand the difference between sex and relationships, and what to or not to do, what's appropriate or not appropriate. Kids need to know, or they figure it out on their own, and that's not a fun situation. So now, how I talk to my daughter, like I said, I read a book about it. I read a couple of books about girls going through puberty. It's not a hard concept. There's a lot of things in the book that she doesn't need to know right now because she's only 10. But she inherited the giant gene, and she's growing fast. It won't be too long. So I just told my daughter, it was a relaxed day. We need to go upstairs and let's talk. She said, okay. So we went upstairs, sat down with my book, and I said, actually, let me go over the phase 1. All right, a couple years ago, because puberty affects boys and girls differently. A couple years ago, I started noticing that she was starting to go through puberty. She was developing breast buds. It's not hard to figure it out. So I sat her down a couple years ago. I said, hey, so have you noticed that your body's been changing? She goes, no. I'm like, well, it is. It's going to start changing over the next few years, and I just want you to know that it's completely normal. And she's like, oh, okay. Pretty simple. It's a very simple introduction to it. So fast forward to phase 2. I sit her down. I say, as you've noticed, your body has been changing. You've been developing breast, and you've been developing hair in places that you haven't normally had it. And I could tell that she was getting a little awkward. So I asked her, I'm like, are you okay? You feeling a little awkward? She's like, yeah, I'm feeling fine. Of course I know she's hiding it. And I told her, it's okay. This is perfectly normal. All girls go through what you're going through right now. It's going to keep changing. All boys, all girls, they go through puberty. It's normal. All animals, they go through puberty. This is normal all throughout nature. So there's nothing wrong or bad about what's happening with you right now. But we need to talk about it so you know what to expect. She calmed, I could tell that she opened up more. And she was, she didn't seem as awkward about it. But you just sit down, and I gave her a very brief definition. I showed her a drawing in the book. I don't have the book now. I should have brought it, but I showed her a drawing in the book of the ovaries, the fallopian tubes, and the uterus, and how they all interact. I didn't have to give her all the fine details. She just needs to know what's going on with her body. And I told her, the egg matures down here, but don't worry, it will not become a baby. That won't happen until you're about 30. So you can add a few things in there just to fill in gaps that don't need to have accurate information right now. Just don't, it's just an egg. It won't become anything else. Went into explaining that before you menstruate, you might feel cramps. But cramps are normal. If it hurts too much, you need to tell me. Because if it hurts too much, it's not a bad thing. It just means your body hasn't completely adjusted, and we should probably go to the doctor to make sure that you don't have to live in that pain. She's like, oh, okay. Because she got nervous when I started talking about cramps and pain. They need to know that they can come to you to talk about this and say, hey, there's a problem. And I told her that, and then I actually bought maxi pads, or bought sanitary pads from the store the other day. They have tweens, the tweens ones, the smaller ones. we opened up a few packets, and I told her, well, this is how it works. It goes into your panties, the wings go underneath. And she's like, oh, okay. And you got to tell the other finer details, like, and it's good to just keep one of these with you in your backpack in case you're at school and it happens and you start bleeding. But also, these things need to stay sanitary, so put it in a Ziploc bag and stop collecting rocks. Because, she's still a kid. Kids are still kids. They still collect rocks and put random shit in their bag. And I told her this needs to stay completely clean. You cannot be placing this down here in your underparts. She's like, okay. And she understood it just fine. Because that's another thing that girls on their own try to figure this stuff out. It just doesn't dawn on them how sanitary things need to be, and they might stuff something dirty down there. It doesn't end up well. And we went over hygiene, like even talked to her about shaving underneath her arms. I didn't say she had to. I just told her, maybe, it's usually best to do it after the shower. Here's a little shaving cream. Most women in the Western world like to shave underneath their arms, but it's not a requirement. You don't have to. But so I'm letting her know there, because she had noticed it, and she noticed that not all girls have it. I'm just letting her know there that this is how most of society operates. It is not a requirement, and if you want to do this, you can do this. So even if she chooses not to do it, she still understands that it's her choice, and she understands why she has arm hair and the other girls don't. It's just you relieve that mystery. You answer the questions that they have. You answer the questions that they don't know to have or don't know to have yet. And you don't have to get into, like I said, she's only 10, so there's not a big need to get into sex and sexuality right now. But in a couple years, or maybe even next year, that's going to be the next phase, the next evolution of the conversation. You don't need to do it all at once, but the next evolution of the conversation is talking about, what a boy's job is as far as nature is concerned, and how that interacts, and how you should expect to be treated, how you should be treated. Basically those details. But bottom line is, talk to your kids, keep that dialogue open. Do not destroy the relationship between you and your child by refusing to be a parent. And refusing to talk to your kids about this stuff, that's refusing to be a parent. And you shouldn't have become a parent in the first place if you're not going to talk to them about something so simple. Something so simple yet so necessary for life. Alright. I think I've beat that subject enough. So, out.